Hello everyone. I'm just gonna wait for a couple of minutes for everyone to tune in. Just gonna speak to myself for a little bit. Okay, I'm just gonna start talking about myself, and then if anyone wants to jump in. Hello, my name is Trish Mitkovska, and I am the Director of Marketing for Revolutionaries, which means that I'm responsible for all three of our imprints and any company projects or events like the Festa. I was the person who was behind the marketing for all the Festa talks and events. My full-time job is in the marketing operations department of a global academic publisher. And I am also a BA graduate in publishing media from Oxford Brookes University, which means that I have been taught and trained by academics and professionals. Originally, I'm from Bulgaria, but I have been studying and now working in the UK for a couple of years. Just to give you some general idea of what we'll cover in this presentation, first I'm gonna give an overall introduction to consumer insight and some techniques and ways of gathering some consumer data. Then I'm gonna delve into exploring reader personas and explaining how they differ from real-life audiences and readers. And then we are gonna look into how we work at Revolutionaries and why our processes are different. Then we'll have a brief Q&A at the end, but feel free to drop your questions in the comment box, and I'll just see them at the end. We'll also have a little announcement just after the presentation, so stick around for a bit longer. What is consumer insight? So if you Google it, you get something along the lines of the text I've put here. Consumer insight is an interpretation of trends in human behaviors that aim to increase the effectiveness of a product or service for the consumer, as well as push sales for the financial benefit of someone provisioning the product or service. Normally, you encounter keywords like data, prognosis, segmenting, analysis, and tagging. And this last one I hate the most, but I'll explain why I dislike it later. All of these tags and keywords are true. The whole process is really about taking separate pieces of data about your targets and your consumers, and then piecing them together to get the overall idea of the consumer of your product or service. But there is something that all these articles and interpretations of consumer insight miss. The way I read it and the way that I was taught at university, but by my lecturers and by the professionals in the publishing industry, consumer insight is really about getting to know the person behind the purchase. It's especially in publishing, it's about the person, the reader, the person that seeks and actively uses your product. It's the individual who is seeking and consuming the fruit of your efforts. And now I can't possibly go ahead with this presentation without giving credit to Oxford Brookes University that taught me what it means to know your audience and when selling books and works of art. I also need to make you aware this presentation is influenced by a guest lecturer we had at uni who was in the consumer insight team of a global publisher. This lecturer taught us about all the different processes and techniques sitting behind each reader persona. So let's look into what reader personas actually are. Normally, reader personas are linked to blogs and magazine publishing. This is someone that you direct your writing at, or even write for, almost as if it's a letter. This is the person that you keep in your mind when you're writing your article or blog post. In book publishing, you'd read or hear about reader personalities or targets, as in target audiences. And this is where you apply your findings from consumer insight. This is where all the different facts and things that you found through consumer insight are applied to build a segment of readers, of your reader that you envision when writing. In Revolutionaries' case, we publish in 3 separate streams while handling a bunch of Medium articles. Our reader persona was inspired by RM's intro to persona, but also influenced by the whole Map of the Soul era. Just as the era albums delve deep to look at the unique, colorful personalities that BTS and ARMY have built for themselves, we at Revolutionaries are aiming to understand the character of our readers, not just scrape the surface. Most consumer insights surveys and questionnaires you've probably ended up filling in without even realizing care about the most top level of data about you as a customer. They're looking at a couple of main things like age, like location. They're looking to find something about what you do for a living, how much you earn per year. They're looking to find your gender, and they also want to know about your engagement with competitor products and services. And yes, this is more than enough in some cases. And I'm actually going to give you an example of how you can build a whole aspect of a marketing campaign just knowing these couple of things about your target reader. This is a story that I was told at uni, and I might remember this wrong, so bear with me, but let's read it through. A middle-aged white male working at the British Parliament takes the Jubilee line to work every day. The man has a very important job and a very serious face. He normally reads a book to work because he prefers it to music in bulky headphones. Most would imagine him to be rereading a war classic or some political manifesto. But the publisher's consumer insight team has done their job and performed their surveys unnoticed by anyone else. Last month, they've put up posters all around the Jubilee line trains and a billboard outside the station where the man catches the tube. The book is a Lord of the Rings look-alike. Surprisingly, the most sought-after genre of anyone traveling towards Westminster Bridge station is fantasy. And this is how marketing trade books differs from marketing any other products. It's interest or taste or even escapism-oriented rather than need or want-centered. If you think just a little over the example that we have here, well, of course, someone with a very important job and a very serious face would need to take their mind off stuff. Of course, if they're on such a high position role at their company or in the parliament, of course, they probably have a studio room or an office in their fancy, pricey house where they work late hours. And of course, the only place where they can disappear is the only space they can hide in London, underground, where there is no service and no one bothers you, and you can just read your book in private. So the main difference between a reader persona and an actual reader is that personas go to extremes. They focus on traits, then place attack on each characteristic feature that they find about you. So the person from the example is actually a reader persona rather than a real-life reader. The person falling in the fantasy politician segment might be of a different race, different gender, ethnicity, age, and might have different occupation, but because the algorithm placed them in the very same place at the very same time, meaning on the Jubilee line in rush hour, and then their recent engagement with similar products was the same as the fantasy politicians, they all fell under the same category. So it will be easy to conclude that instead of having one reader persona for each very specific type of reader, we have numerous types of readers, all seen within the same reader persona segment. It's almost as a shared personality or a lucid dream. Every book marketer knows how personal a relationship between a reader and a book is. And they all aim to put the right book in the hands of the right individual and possibly at the right time too, just to drive sales, obviously. At Revolutionaries, our sole goal is to present our readers to something they wouldn't have discovered elsewhere. I mean, where else would you find a cross-genre book blending fiction with sociology and psychology, experimenting with BTS-inspired content and showing some self-assessment and author commentary into the mix? I know this is a mouthful, but I'm just trying to explain the book. Where would you find an animal rights political primer or a cocktail book inspired by BTS members, songs and inside jokes? Modern day publishers are still the gatekeepers of knowledge, and it is our duty, we at Revolutionaries, to introduce you to authors and ideas that are revolutionary in their own way. So the main difference is how niche our content is and where most of our target segments are situated. And as you might have already guessed it, Revolutionaries is situated in fandom. I cannot explain in my own words how Revolutionaries started or what the idea was behind founding it, because I only joined the team a month and a half ago. I've been closely following everything that they publish and everything that they say on social media. But I decided to actually pull up a quote from our CEO, Wolia, just to try and convey how what the idea was behind founding the revolutionary publisher. She says, "I discovered that what I was trying to do didn't fit in the current publishing or business landscape. I was building something new, or at least something unconventional. For now, I'm framing it as Revolutionaries is situated in fandom. The dominant fandom, of course, is ARMY, but throughout 2021, that is set to change as we expand. So my vision is growing to incorporate all forms of fandom as transformational and revolutionary spaces. Fandom provides an unparalleled basis for building a company which seeks to engage and empower everyday people in a multiple of ways. I'm going to speak a bit more about what it means to have not only your company, but also having at your disposal the fandom when you're thinking about marketing campaigns and marketing strategies tomorrow. Well, tomorrow for me, but later today for you, probably. The summit. I know that Oda covered a bit of this in her presentation, which was just before mine. So if you missed this, definitely watch it, because it can give you a really good general idea of what it means to have a whole fandom, or just the people that are in the fan base of something, just to be able to rely on them when you're trying to gather some consumer insight or any sort of target data. So, getting our inspiration from BTS's messages of love and acceptance, we're trying to build a publisher that hosts all works that wouldn't have been sitting comfortably elsewhere. Our company is centered around mixing unusual topics with a business structure that sought to stand in resistance to social norms and practices. These are again Wolia's words. I'm sorry that I'm stealing everything, but I couldn't have put it better. Now, our next slide is truly revolutionary, because you wouldn't have a business presentation with a slide dedicated to its competitors elsewhere. Again, I know that Oda covered a couple of BTS-inspired titles in her presentation, but these are just a couple to exemplify what the competition base looks for us, and how we get our inspiration from them, and how we decide to take specific decisions based on what our competitors are doing. We want to say that we see and appreciate our competitors. The content we all publish is so niche and so specific that we can't afford to be narrow-minded. When marketing BTS or ARMY-centered content, it's easy to think, there is this huge fan base that would be interested in my book because it's so niche and there aren't too many academic titles inspired by BTS. Or non-fiction literature about them. But this is so very, very far from the truth. There are 4 books these 4 books were only published in the past 2 years, and they're already gaining popularity on Goodreads, Amazon, private forums, and book clubs. And there are many more like them, which is why our business thought something needed to be done differently, just to make our book stand out. This is where our imprints showed up. So instead of keeping all our books under the same publisher name, we created an imprint solely dedicated to BTS and ARMY-centered content. Under this imprint, you'll find I Am ARMY and Bring the Spirits, 2 titles which wouldn't be sitting under the same imprint anywhere else, because they have completely different topics of interest. One of them being a cocktail book, the other one being a collection of essays. But what binds them together for us is they're both situated in fandom, and possibly their reader persona would either be the same or quite similar. We normally have a couple of reader personas per title. But having all backlist and upcoming books positioned at the same place is easier to memorize for us and for readers. Imagine that, to exemplify this, imagine that you're writing an essay on army and you're looking for proved references. You'd rarely go to a big publisher's catalog. You'd normally go to an online library or just Google some keywords. But how many libraries stock products on army and BTS? Which means that having the bulletproof imprint gives us the opportunity to make some space for all upcoming fandom content we'll have available in the following years, including proofread academic texts. You'll notice that Idle Limerence is sitting quite far from bulletproof imprint, and you might ask why, since it's Revolutionaries' first book, which was after all published by our CEO and has every right to be together with the rest of the fandom works. Well, this is because as Walia decided to pull all BTS and ARMY-related titles into their own separate imprint, she also took the responsibility to guard and protect the Revolutionaries' main publishing stream, leaving Idle Limerence together with the Revolutionary social worker books and our brand new 5 Essays for Freedom. There was a virtual launch party, which is part of the Festa. I believe it happened earlier today. So if you haven't watched this, I definitely recommend you go and check it out on YouTube, because I know that the author is very passionate about her work, and I know that it was a great party. We are currently also working on developing a third publishing stream dedicated to literary pieces and poetry, which will appear under the Moonrise imprint. I'm not allowed to mention any of the specifics yet, but you can already find some of the Moonrise pieces on the imprint's Instagram account, so go check them out if you're interested. So to apply all we covered until now to an actual example, we are going to take Idle Limerence and build the book's target reader, its reader persona. Please bear in mind that our personas are still under development, so these are just my own marketing rumblings. So yeah, it's all just throwing some ideas in there to try and figure out what our target reader would look like. Instead of focusing on outside traits, again, they're important for promotion, but this is how we work. It's different to other publishers. We're going to look at our reader persona's interests. First and obvious point, they're most probably an army, if not even a multi. So this means that they're probably quite familiar with BTS's concepts, eras, storylines. They know the names of the members, they know the songs, they know the references, the inside jokes, all of this. I believe there is also a synopsis or some sort of a dictionary in the book. So if you're not familiar with this, you'll very easily find what everything means. Secondly, this is someone who is bored of reading chart titles or Man Booker Prize nominees. They either find them monotonous or pretentious or straight up boring. So we can say they are drawn to unexplored pieces of writing, to new and emerging authors. Again, apologies if I'm insulting anyone's personal taste and they really like reading Booker Prize winners or nominees, but we're talking about the person who is not the target for prize books or nominee books. We're talking about a completely different type of reader. And then, since the genre of the book is a bit challenging, it mixes up fiction with nonfiction, we could assume that our reader is interested in unconventional genres. So accompanying titles they might have read in their background, or they are thinking of reading, have on their really, really long to read list. Accompanying titles they might have read could potentially be in contemporary literature, nonfiction, essays, or sociology and psychology. And then, because we're of course talking about a person who is interested in BTS and possibly found our title through an army fellow or through they already knew about Revolutionaries, we're naturally speaking of someone who is open-minded, someone who accepts other cultures and other opinions, someone who is a debater, someone who is not afraid to enter into a debate and most of the times exit having learned something and maybe admitted defeat, or even if they won the argument, they still exit having learned something about the opposite point of view of the person that they were speaking to. Sure, this doesn't give us insight into where to promote physically or when to promote geographically speaking. But being an indie publisher, knowing stuff like this about our readers comes along in our live streams, in the way that we address them. For example, you would never hear from us, "Hi guys, welcome back to our channel." This is a completely different type of reader and completely different type of audience, and this is not our target here. It comes along in the way that we market to our readers, in the market messaging that we send to them, and the way that we communicate with them. We treat them as experienced, smart professionals, people who are eager to learn more about the world, to learn more about publishing, to learn more about different cultures, to learn more about exploring yourself while doing something else, while listening to music or while reading a book. We're talking about people who know where they're sitting, what their position is in the world, and they're eager to evolve and to grow in their professional or personal spheres of interest. And yet, having all these imprints, having all these books means having a couple of reader personas for every single one of them. Keeping our brand promises in mind, we don't want to tag our segments by outside features. Of course, as I mentioned in the story example, this is important when you're doing physical marketing, when you need to know when and where to place your billboards or posters. But because we're just starting as a publisher, most of our marketing is online. We have to figure out where our audience is spending their time, what platform they're spending their time on, when they're doing this, when they're posting, when they're engaging. So for us, it's what matters more than knowing their age or their gender is what you're interested and passionate for. So keeping our brand promises in mind, we don't want to tag them by outside features. We don't care about the filters that you as readers wear for the outside world. We don't want to adapt you to a segment that you might not fit into, or you might, but this is not how we are building our segments. We're looking at characteristics, at all the different versions of you. We're interested whether our readers are vegans, whether they're army or multi-fandom, if they're interested in philosophy or psychology or both, what excites them and inspires them to push the boundaries of their own spheres of interest each day. Because you can't promote books for change if you don't shake your own company rules. We're looking to know your personality, and knowing you as a person is where our marketing starts. Now I can take a couple of questions, but before we start, I just want to make a little announcement coming from our company. In case you found this presentation interesting and you have some academic or professional background in marketing, we'll be pleased to have you on our team. There are currently 2 open positions for imprint marketing managers, one for Revolutionaries publishing stream and one for our upcoming Moonrise imprint. You can find all the specifics on our website in the recruitment section, but most of your role responsibilities will be around preparing annual or biannual marketing strategies, putting together something, and sometimes presenting product campaigns, managing event promotion and some data management with our CRM too. But if you don't have experience with CRM, this is all fine. I do, and I'm happy to help with training. Both positions are casual, and you'll be working with myself and a small team of amazing marketing officers. Again, we all only joined in less than 2 months ago, so we're still trying to bond and to figure out what is our internal team dynamics. So you would have the amazing opportunity to be part of this. Okay, let's take my first question. Well, getting a question from the boss, always amazing. I need to show what I'm saying. What is the best part of your role? What excites you the most? I think my answer is not going to be the conventional answer for a marketeer. I remember when we had this lecture in consumer insight at uni, when the lecturer was showing us how they piece together, well, first how they gather all the different pieces of information about their readers and then piece them together. Everyone was sort of scared, creeped out. How can the person publishing the book that I'm currently reading knew all about this about me? But I was fascinated. I sort of I have this thing where I love getting to know people. I love getting inside their heads and just learning how they think and trying to figure out what excites them and what drives them and what inspires them to do what they're doing. This is why every time I am attending a seminar or some sort of a study group or a focus group, I want to know who I'm speaking to, so I can adapt my own tone of voice, so I can adapt my own thoughts and my own opinions and the way I present them, so I can actually influence them and send the right messaging, if that makes sense. So I would say definitely what I love about my role and what I love about marketing is just getting to know your audience, because it's never the same person. It's really easy to say, yeah, all of Revolutionaries readers are people that are excited to learn more about different genres and experiment with other cultures and learn more about the world. But this is not the case. I'm going to speak about Moonrise a little bit, just because I'm myself experimenting with poetry. And this is what Moonrise is focusing on and going to be publishing in the next year. Having the Idle Limerence reader persona and then having probably the target for Moonrise, these are going to be completely different people. Even if it's the same person sitting, having both books and reading both books, they have two separate personalities, two separate personas within them. One of them being interested in poetry and being a romantic, and then the other one being actually a revolutionary, trying to sort of push the boundaries of the publishing sphere. So yeah, I think this is one way to put what excites me most about my role. But if there is anything else, I wouldn't have been. If it was anything else, I wouldn't have been as passionate about marketing as I am. Okay, let's read my question from Diane. What might be the main challenge for your role in the next 12 months? Okay, this is a good question. I guess because we're trying to, there are a couple of challenges. Obviously, because we're only starting to build our marketing team. I guess trying to piece together each of our personal dynamics, each of our styles of work is going to be a challenge. It's always a challenge getting used to working with new people. But until now, I haven't yet encountered any problems working with the amazing group of people that I have been lucky enough to be collaborating with. I guess another challenge I can speak about is potentially drawing a bigger audience to Revolutionaries, because we're just starting. It's only been a year since the publisher was started, and we only have a couple of titles, even though we have loads on upcoming in our front list. It's difficult trying to build the different reader personas for each one of these titles, and then actually finding the people and then trying to convince them to pick their interest into your title and actually convince them to purchase it. Yeah, driving sales is always a challenge for marketing, but I am feeling positive because we have found our niche. We have our existing audience that we can rely on, and we already have a couple of ideas of how to proceed in 2021. Okay, let's look at my next question. To what extent do you work with the communication director? Thank you, Monica, for this question. Right. Yes, I have had a couple of collaborations with Manilyn, our communication director, already. The first one was when we're trying to plan the annual marketing structure for 2021. Obviously, loads of our promotion has to be free. It has to happen through social media, and she's the person that drives our social media, but she's also the person that interacts with our audience the most. saying that I'll be expecting from the upcoming marketing managers to build our reader personas for each imprint. I will be expecting them to collaborate with our communications director a lot, just because this is the person that is actually familiar with our audience and our potential readers. Every time that there is any sort of marketing which involves social media, and most of our marketing obviously does, we have to promote our events and titles on social media. This is where most promotion sits nowadays. Every time that we're trying to plan something, I would go to our communications director, because this is the person that is in charge of our social media, and this is, as I said, the person interacting most with our readers and the people that are behind the books even. Yes, I think this sort of answers the question. Another question from Walia: what does your workflow look like? Explain to us about your Trello setup and how you work with your team. Right. Yes. So for anyone who is not familiar with Trello, this is a system of you sort of have like a whiteboard where you put little notes for yourself, or if you decide to share the board with your team or people outside of your team, everyone can see it. It's sort of a space which is a bit more organized in a group chat, and where you can track the progress of upcoming projects or projects in progress. The way that I have set up my workflow is because we are working in a casual way. Most of us have other jobs and other responsibilities, just like everyone else. I always try to set aside. I don't even try to set aside time, because I don't have to set aside time. I am really passionate about my work, and I really find it as sort of a hobby, even because it's something that I'm interested in. This is why I applied for the job, and this is why I am so pleased that I'm now working for Revolutionaries. It's just conveying this sort of internal team politics to my team, trying to show them that I'm very chill with my responsibilities, but I also can rely on myself. I know that if I have a deadline, I'll definitely meet it, if not a couple of days earlier. Where I'm with my team, I'm trying to give them more guidance on what to do and when to do, but I also want to give them the freedom to grow as marketeers on their own, because you can't really learn by someone telling you exactly what to do. You need to figure out what and where to go, and who to go to ask for specific things. So I am trying to give more responsibility to the marketeers that I'm working with, but I'm also trying to provide some sort of guidance and training where it's needed. And I think this is conveyed on my Trello board. Next question: is it hard to market a book you don't like? Right. I still haven't encountered it with Revolutionaries, because we have a small list of titles. I still haven't ended up hearing about a book that I don't like, but similar to I watched all this presentation earlier, and I saw that you got a question if it's easier to work on a book that you do like. Obviously, she's working in a very different department, and her way of working is completely different to mine. But the way that for her the process gets slowed down if she likes the book, it's the same for me. If I really, really, really like the book, I would try and tailor the perfect marketing strategy for them. I would put all my time towards marketing this one title, which is obviously it's not the perfect business decision, let alone marketing decision, leaving all the other titles, upcoming titles or backlist titles on the side, where you're trying to tailor this one perfect campaign. This is not ideal for either of the sites involved in this process. But I would say marketing a book that you like is more difficult than marketing a book that you don't like, because from a marketing perspective, all you need to do, you don't necessarily need to know too much about the content. As a marketer, I only need to know what is on the blurb and a bit about the author, just to try and figure out who is my target, and obviously know a couple of the unique selling points that this title presents to its audience. So I would say it doesn't matter if I don't like the book, it matters if I do, because then I would waste all my time trying to tailor something perfect, which is never ideal in our world. It's not a real life option. Okay, my next question. Your advice for freelance writers that are trying to be published: do we try to adjust to the market, or do we opt to stay in our zone of interest? This is a really good question. From a marketing perspective, obviously, I would always say I wouldn't say try to adapt to the market. But if you want to learn more about this, you can watch our editorial director, Aurora. She shared her writers session on Festa, and I know that it's saved on YouTube. I wouldn't say try to adapt to the market. I would never suggest this. I believe that for each sort of writing, there is an audience, and I believe that if you feel the pressure to adapt your writing to your potential reader, this will come across wrong in the end product. It wouldn't be something that you would be happy with, and it would most probably be felt by your readers. But yeah, it's an interesting question. It's an interesting period that we are living in, and I know that lots of authors are trying to are aiming for prizes and for nominations and for sales, and this is really felt by us readers. It doesn't come across right. How and did the coronavirus pandemic change your process of working? This is a question from my best friend, who is very familiar with my process of working. I would say if it wasn't for the pandemic, I wouldn't have been looking for a second job. I wouldn't have the free time to be working for Revolutionaries. I wouldn't be able to dedicate as much time or as much effort to my job as a marketing director, which, as you can imagine, is quite demanding, even if it's a casual position. So obviously lots of people and lots of communities have suffered, and the economy has suffered from the whole pandemic situation. But from a positive point of view, if it wasn't for this time, I wouldn't have been able to discover Revolutionaries as my second employer and as this amazing team of professionals that are actually helping me to grow as a professional and to explore different ideas and different options and different career paths. So for me, this has been a good sort of part. Well, one of the very few good things that we were actually forced to stay inside. Okay, I think I have one last question, so I'm gonna take one more, and then we can wrap up. Oh, sorry, this was the last question. Okay, apologies. So yes, just to sum up, we are currently looking for marketing managers. If you want to find more about the roles, go check our website and everything is there, or go on social media. I know that our team is constantly promoting our new positions, or get in touch with me, or I believe I have shared my Twitter handle below. Thank you very much for coming, and definitely tune in for our summit. I'll still be speaking a bit about our marketing and a bit about having our publisher positions in fandom, and how this actually influences gathering consumer data. Thank you.